In 2078, it was a typical clear summer day. Passers-by leisurely strolled through the city, and the streets were bustling with people. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a mysterious cloud of blue light appeared in the middle of the street and started expanding, sparkling with electric discharges. Similar clouds of blue light emerged in other parts of the city, in different cities, countries, and even continents. The unknown blue light spread across every corner of the Earth. Scientists began studying this anomaly and concluded that the energy emanating from the blue light was safe for humans. However, various electronic devices temporarily ceased to function when exposed to the blue light due to the energy it emitted. It was also observed that one could enter inside the blue light. These blue lights were referred to as portals. One day, while studying a portal, scientists passed through it and found themselves in a cave filled with unknown creatures. "Oh my God, what is this? What are these creatures? Let's get out of here quickly," they exclaimed. The unidentified creatures possessed magical properties. The other side of the portals turned out to be a realm inhabited by magical beings and monsters. This other side of the portals came to be known as dungeons. The exploration of these portals continued. After some time, the amount of energy emanating from the portals started decreasing. Magical beings and monsters began to emerge from the portals. A brutal battle between humans and these creatures ensued. During the battles, a significant number of people manifested extraordinary powers. These individuals, who acquired this power, came to be known as the Awakened. In the dungeons, specialized miners started extracting magical stones. It's been 20 years. Another work shift ended for a miner named Peter in the underground mines. He was around 22 years old. "It's so hot," Peter exclaimed as he unbuttoned his jacket. "Well done, everyone. You did a great job. Return your picks and armbands. Collect your daily earnings and enjoy your freedom," announced the group supervisor of the underground miners. Peter was about to leave when he heard his name called out. "Hey, Peter, come here for a moment." It was the same group supervisor. "What do you need, boss? Why did you call me?" Peter asked. "Just a second, it was somewhere here," the supervisor replied, rummaging through the inner pockets of his jacket. Found it. Here's your pay for today." Peter heard the response and saw the envelope being handed to him. "Excellent, thank you. But why are you giving out the wages instead of the cashier, as usual?" Peter inquired. "Extracting magical stones in the underground is not an easy job. I'm glad to see your hard work and dedication every day. That's why I put a little extra in the envelope. And to prevent others from noticing, I decided to give you the money personally," the supervisor explained with a smile. "Keep up the good work." "Thank you so much, boss. I will strive my best. I won't let you down." Peter gratefully expressed his thanks. All right, go home. Have a safe journey. Come in early tomorrow," the supervisor replied. Peter, in a good mood, headed home, pondering along the way. "Today, I received a bonus. Maybe I can buy my younger sister the dinner she loves so much. And I can also buy her favorite cookies." He stopped at a store on the way and bought everything to delight his little sister. Approaching his house, Peter entered the digital lock code, opened the doors, and upon stepping inside, he exclaimed, "I'm home." His younger sister Linda rushed out of the room and exclaimed joyfully, "You're back." Linda recently turned 17 years old. She was a beautiful girl. "Yeah, hey. Have you had dinner?" "Not yet." "Great. Were you busy all day again?" "I'll prepare dinner. Just wait a little." "What do we have for dinner tonight?" "Your favorite," Peter replied teasingly. "Could it be pudechige?" Linda exclaimed in admiration. "Let me help with the cooking too." "You guessed it." Peter and Linda prepared dinner together, ate heartily, and went to bed. The next morning, Peter, as usual, went to work. Upon arriving at work, he noticed that there were no other workers present. He heard from his boss, "Today's work is cancelled." "What? Why? There's nothing behind me, right?" the boss asked, pointing his finger over his shoulder. "But there should be. There was a portal in this spot. I heard that someone broke into our company's purchase portal last night and cleared it out completely. That's why the portal is no longer here. We just found out about the incident ourselves. We told the other workers not to come today, but I guess they didn't reach you. So, consider today a day off. You can go home and rest." "Yes. My phone is so old that calls hardly come through. And now it seems they've stopped altogether," Peter thought sadly. "I just wasted money on transportation. Oh well, I won't be too upset. There's nothing I can do. Since I went out so early, I'll visit my father at the hospital. I can't visit him often." In another part of the city, A girl named Mary and her younger brother John were on their way to school. But on the way, they stopped at a place where John had lost his wallet with pocket money the day before. Now he was diligently trying to find it. "Are you sure you dropped it right here?" Mary asked her brother. Yes. It's definitely somewhere here. Just wait a little longer. Why did you come here in the first place? And how did you manage to lose your wallet?" Mary wondered. "If I say that we came here in search of adventure, my sister will definitely kill me," John contemplated. "Do you want me to be late for school because of you?" Mary continued to protest. "And how does mom even trust you with pocket money?" A message beeped in Mary's pocket. "Who's been texting me since morning?" she thought, taking out her phone. The message mentioned a dungeon rupture. What? A dungeon rupture? In this neighborhood? Forget the wallet. We need to get out of here urgently. Mary panicked. "Hey, John. They say there was a dungeon rupture in this neighborhood just now, so let's go," she called out to her brother, but stopped herself mid-sentence as she saw something horrifying. Meanwhile, John, spotting his wallet lying next to a pillar, rushed towards it. Finally found it. So that's where it was. John rejoiced, approaching the wallet. Next to the wallet, he noticed pieces of fur lying around. John stared at them in astonishment. What kind of fur is this? Where did it come from? He wondered. Then John noticed the pillar next to which the wallet lay. The pillar was also covered in fur. A furry pillar? That's strange, the boy marveled, looking up. And then, to his horror, John realized that it wasn't a pillar at all but the leg of a giant monster. What's this? He began to stutter out of fear. Mary leaned against the wall of the house, covering her mouth with her hand, and looked at the monster with wide terrified eyes. Monsters. It hasn't even been 5 minutes since the alert, and they are already here. First, as we were taught in school, we need to remain as quiet as possible. But it seems like my brother wasn't taught that. Fortunately, this monster seems to have poor vision because he still hasn't noticed us. John is so close to it. What should we do? John. And John stood there, paralyzed with fear, with the thoughts spinning in his head. My legs won't move, I can't make them budge. I want to run, but I can't move from this spot. I'm terrified. At that moment, someone's hand picked up a brick lying there and threw it at the monster's head. The throw was powerful and accurate. The monster's head started bleeding from the impact. It was Peter, the skilled brick thrower, who was standing on the roof of the house. I'll take him on. Run away quickly, Peter shouted to Mary and John. And he shouted to the monster, Hey, you monkey imitation, come here. Try to catch me, you freak. The enraged monster, roaring at the top of its lungs, chased after Peter. John's weakened knees gave way, and he sat down on the ground. Mary ran up to him and, feeling him, exclaimed, John, are you okay? Need to report. John struggled to articulate the words. What do you mean? Well, we need to quickly inform about what happened. The boy finally managed to say, My name is Peter. I remember when I was still young, strange portals suddenly started appearing all over the world. And after that, monsters began to emerge and destroy our world. Over time, everything changed. Some people started to develop an unknown power. These people were called the Awakened. Together with helpers from another world, they began to kill monsters and restore peace on Earth. Through their actions, they gave people the most important thing, hope. Hope to find peace. Our family believed in it too, but the monster hiding in the shelter killed our mother. I don't know if it was the cause of my state of shock, but at that moment, I felt the awakening. Moreover, I was saved by another awakened person. After awakening, I gained a rare ability called Magical Enhancement. It allowed the user to increase their physical strength through magic. However, even after becoming awakened, my physical skills didn't change much. My magic was very weak, despite having a rare ability. When I used even a small amount of magic, I would suffer from muscle pain for 4 days afterward. Despite all this, I still decided to try myself in the Monster Hunter exam conducted by the Hunter Association. Hunters engage in monster hunting and earn a considerable amount of money from it. However, in almost every aspect, I didn't meet the required standards. In other words, I failed the exam. After the monsters to some extent disappeared, people directed their efforts towards stabilizing the world and society, as well as preventing the abuse of personal power. My father was a police officer, working tirelessly for the benefit of society and for me and my younger sister. However, society lacked the strength and expertise to prevent the violence of people who possessed extraordinary abilities. As a result, our father suffered a severe head injury and lost consciousness while on duty. Several years have passed since then, but he still hasn't recovered. Therefore, in order to support myself and my sister, I dropped out of school and started earning money. I took on any job available, no matter how rough and demanding it was. It wasn't easy for me, but recently I landed a well-paying job as a miner in the underground. That's why I can't afford to die under any circumstances. Peter ran with all his might, trying to escape from the monster down the street. Suddenly, the monster made a huge leap towards Peter. In the nick of time, Peter dodged, and the monster crashed into the wall. He almost caught me, I barely managed to dodge, thought Peter. The monster is knocked out. It's not moving at all. Well, I need to keep running. Oh no, my ankle. I think I twisted it. In this condition, I won't get far. I need to call for help. Or maybe I can hide somewhere. There it is. Peter spotted a construction site not far away, fenced off, and limped towards it, trying not to put too much weight on his injured leg. When he reached the building, he opened the gate but didn't see anyone there. No one's here. Maybe everyone's already in hiding. Well, first I need to find a place to hide. Meanwhile, the motionless monster opened its eyes and let out a loud roar. Peter struggled up to the third floor. He found a secluded spot there and sat down to rest. His injured leg was bothering him greatly. Seems safe here, Peter pondered. I saw that monster in a book while preparing for the hunter's exam. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He received a message stating that monsters from the underground had appeared in the area. So much time has passed since that creature showed up. Why did they send the message only now? Peter exclaimed. Although, maybe it's because of my phone. Calls haven't been getting through. Now messages are delayed. Perhaps I need to buy a new phone. Well, for now, the most important thing is that I managed to escape from that monster. Maybe I should seek help from the Hunters Association. At the other end of the room, boards were stacked, and behind them, Peter noticed a red light. He became curious and approached, removing a couple of boards, and saw a cloud of red light. I can't believe it. The red zone. Peter exclaimed. Very, very rarely, along with ordinary portals, very rare portals also appear. There are a total of 3 types of portals that are connected to dungeons. Ordinary portals generate sparks of magic, like an electric current flowing in blue light. However, there are also darker blue light portals that do not produce sparks of magic. They are called bridges. And there is a third kind, the red zones. These portals don't generate sparks of magic, and their light is red. First, bridges are portals that are not connected to dungeons. They serve as bridges to other dimensions. Unlike the other 2 portals, there are helpers inside the bridges that support people from our world. However, in order to summon them, you must pay a price. Since Peter heard it all from hearsay, he didn't know the details. From the time of the first portal until today, several bridge portals have been discovered. Beyond them are magical races that could only be found in games or fantasy novels. Inside the bridges live people who can use martial arts, as well as mythical creatures of which there are earthly legends. Most of them do not kill people like monsters. On the contrary, they have contributed to the restoration of tranquility on Earth by helping the awakened, destroying powerful monsters after contracting with Earth when it plunged into utter chaos after the first dungeon rift occurred. Some of them are now living on Earth. And lastly, the red zones. They are also connected to the portals, but at the same time have many distinctive features. The first is the difference in time. An ordinary portal has no difference with Earth time. However, portals associated with red zones have a time difference. It is impossible to say exactly how much, but 1 hour outside the portal is equal to 8 hours inside the red zone. The second is the size of the rewards. The rewards you can get in dungeons are or that is on the way to the boss, high-quality corpses of strong magical creatures or heliotropes. Chances are slim, but still, you can earn skills while destroying the boss, his weapons, defenses and gems that are in the boss room. Of course, you can't get all the rewards in one dungeon at once, whether it's a red zone or a regular dungeon. However, unlike a regular dungeon, the number of available rewards in the red zone was much greater. Third, it is impossible to determine the level of difficulty. The difficulty level of a portal is determined by the amount of magic that occurs in it. Neither energy nor even a small amount of magic leaves the red zone. Because of this, the difficulty level cannot be determined. However, until now, most red zones have a high difficulty. Fourth, the possibility of closing the portal. Unlike ordinary portals, the entrance and exit from which is completely free, in the red zones sometimes there is a phenomenon called destruction of the dungeons. According to survivors, when you defeat a boss, a portal appears that takes you outside. However, among the ruined red zones, there are cases where the group that entered the portal does not appear, and the portal disappears. No one knows what happened inside the red zone at such times. It is said that no matter how much time passed, the dungeon rift did not happen. Aside from the aforementioned, such a portal still holds a lot of mysteries. Basically, inside the red zone, just like in a normal portal, you can get weapons, protective equipment and various ores. Also, with a low probability you can find magic books, with which you can get any skill or accessories that can enhance the already acquired human equipment. If you're lucky, you can find items inside the red zones that no one has found before. Because of this, people call red zones the kind of lottery ticket for which you risk your life. Despite the fact that many riches can be found in the red zones, it is illegal to enter without permission due to the phenomenon of dungeon destruction and the inability to determine the level of difficulty. As soon as a red zone is discovered, it must be reported immediately to either the Hunters Association or the Awakened Regulation Center. It is said that the one who finds the red zone is entitled to a large reward. Peter thought about it. During my studies, I went over the subject of red zones, but I had no idea that I would get to see them live. So far, only 11 red zones have been discovered around the world. So I discovered 12 red zones. What a stroke of luck! Anyway, I'm not going to go inside the red zone. I should call for help first, and when it is safer to report the red zone and get a reward. Suddenly there was a furious roar coming from the street. Peter looked out and saw the monster chasing him. How did he know I was here? Peter wondered. Isn't the rest of his ability weak apart from good hearing? I distinctly remember reading about that creature in a textbook. I remember. It said it could increase its hearing tenfold. Peter realized that he had remembered these facts about the monster too late. He began to think how he could escape. Going down the stairs was not a good option. You could surely run into the monster. And his sore leg would not let him run fast. He thought about hiding behind some building materials. And then Peter remembered that he had read in a book that once out of a dungeon, a magical creature doesn't come back. He decided to hide in the red zone for a while, until the monster was gone. But no, you can't, because if I go inside the red zone, there might be destruction. Or, what if inside the dungeon the difference with the real time would be very big? One thought after another flew through Peter's mind. This monster is sniffing me out. Even if I hid behind the building materials, he would still find me. There was only one way out of the building, up the stairs. But you can't go down it, there's this thing waiting at the bottom. What to do? A monster was coming up from below. His heavy footsteps grew louder and louder. And now it was on the third floor. The monster began to roam around the floor, sniffing out Peter. It got closer and closer. Peter lurched behind a wall, clutching a piece of metal pipe tightly. At least some kind of weapon. I can do it. I can do it. I only have one chance. In his mind he convinced himself. Beforehand, the boy set the alarm on his phone and left the phone a few meters away from him, just in the monster's path. The monster had already smelled Peter and was walking straight toward the wall behind which Peter was. The beast had already passed the phone, and at that moment an alarm clock went off behind him, and its loud sound echoed through the entire floor, echoing off the walls. The monster let out a deafeningly loud roar. It turned sharply at the sound of the phone. Peter sneaked out of his hiding place, preparing to lunge. When I was studying for my qualifying exam and doing my studies concerning the Hunter Association, I saw this creature in a book. It has practically nothing, but I remember that the book said that this monster has a very good ear. In addition, it can instantly increase its already good hearing range tenfold. He may have found me through the use of his hearing skill. If I make even the slightest sound, he will follow me. But I know from textbooks that overly good hearing can also be a weak spot for a monster. It has been said that even the monster's own roar can act on its ears. So I calculated that if he opened his ears and heard a loud sound, he would panic for a while. Thus, by setting the alarm clock to maximum volume and turning on the tune that wakes me up in the morning, I was able to immobilize the monster briefly. Peter's leg pain has subsided a bit, so to some extent he will even be able to run. But not very fast, so a recovered monster could easily catch up with him. The only risky option left was to attack the monster and seriously wound him. Peter ran up to the frozen monster and with all his might, he stuck a piece of pipe in its leg. Blood spurted out. There was a deafening roar from the wounded monster. Peter ran as fast as his injured leg would allow, running for the exit, scrambling in his head. I'm going to dash past the monster, grab the backpack I left by the stairs, and get out of here. And when things calm down, I'll come back here and report that I found the red zone. And I'll get a reward for it. But then an unexpected blow threw him to the opposite side of the exit. It was the monster that got him with its upper limb. Peter hit some building structure painfully and fell to the floor. He was lying on the floor, and there was only one thought in his head, splintering with pain: what is it? I can't move. And at that moment a sharp piece of metal jumped off the building structure that Peter had hit before he fell and began to fall directly on Peter. It jabbed the sharp edge right into the boy's side. Peter screamed in pain. The monster heard Peter's scream and began to approach him. Peter was so exhausted that he could only watch the approaching monster with his fists raised. Peter clamped his hands over his mouth to keep from making a sound. After all, the monster only goes for loud noises. And the creature, hearing no more sounds from Peter, turned around and walked toward the still ringing phone. Peter understood that in this state he would not be able to get far, and sooner or later the monster would find the ringing phone, smash it, and after that there would be nothing to prevent him from hearing Peter. He started crawling toward where the red zone cloud was. Since this is how it turned out, I have no other choice. I absolutely have to survive. It's too soon for me to die. Peter cheered himself up as he struggled to pull his injured body up. A trail of blood followed him across the floor. Here came the boards, behind which was the red zone. He struggled to push back the board covering the passageway. There was still a bit more to go. And at that moment there was a loud bang, and the alarm clock stopped ringing. The monster finally found the phone, and crushed it with a blow of his huge fist. Now there was nothing to prevent the creature from hearing the slightest sound Peter was making. The monster immediately turned toward Peter and started walking toward him. Peter made a desperate dash toward the red zone. Hurry! Hurry! We have to get out of here! And the beast was already close by, its stinking breath could be heard. But Peter had already reached the red zone with his hands. Now he's halfway there. Another tug and he's on the other side. We did it. First we have to stop the bleeding and think about what to do. But Peter didn't have time to finish his thought, because when he looked up he saw some creature with a sword, looking like a skeleton, standing 2 steps in front of him. Oh no! Not that one! Right at the entrance! Peter groaned. The creature raised its sword. No! I can't die! I must go back! The sword pierced Peter. I can't die like this. If I'm gone, what will happen to our family? I tried so hard to survive. The sword pierced Peter again, and again, and again. I don't want to. I don't want to die. It raced through Peter's fading consciousness. What is to be done? Father. What will happen to him? Linda. Sis. What will happen to her? I can't die. Am I dead? The pain is gone. I feel peace. What is happening to me? Will I meet my mother? Daddy. Sis. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I'm falling somewhere. Suddenly, someone grabbed Peter by the arm. Who is it? Is that you, Mother? And then Peter woke up somewhere out in the open. He looked around incomprehensibly. What? Where am I? I'm dead. Or am I? He looked around in astonishment and incomprehension until his gaze stopped on his own right arm. It couldn't have been his arm, though. A skeleton hand was sticking out of the sleeve of his sweater. Help! Help! Peter yelled in fear. He shifted his gaze to his left arm. A skeleton hand was sticking out of his left sleeve as well. What? What the hell? Peter mumbled, not understanding anything. He pulled up the sleeve of his sweater and saw that the whole arm looked like skeleton bones. It couldn't be. It can't be true. This can't be happening to me. Peter unbuttoned his shirt and saw that his whole body was made up of bare bones. He groped his head and realized everything. I had become a skeleton. But still, I survived, didn't I? I may be a skeleton, but I'm alive. I'm not dead. He cheered himself up. But I am a skeleton, not a man. What am I to do? Peter bowed his head, wrapped his arms around it, and sunburned. And behind his back the red zone glowed. How long he sat like that he didn't know. After a while Peter calmed down a little and began to reason. I calmed down a little. Although I was glad right away that I wasn't dead, I now realized that I had turned into something I don't know. Some kind of skeleton. How long has it been since I've been here? And what happened to the skeletons who stuck their swords into me? If I could cry, I might feel better. But I can't even cry anymore. But I can't sit here forever. Peter picked up a piece of sharp metal pipe that was lying beside him. He also thought it must be the piece that was sticking out of his back. I had to look around to see how things were going and what to do next. First I hit the red zone, and right after that I was killed. The skeletons had disappeared somewhere, I couldn't see them. He looked around. The place looked like a dungeon of the field type. In the distance he could see some kind of road. This place could have been a one-way dungeon. Peter didn't think he could get into such a wide dungeon. Working as a miner, he had been in various dungeons, but this was the first time he had seen one. Not a single magical stone was visible. Only earth, dried up trees, and ordinary stones. Maybe this wasn't a dungeon. A thought popped into Peter's head. Well, all right. He reasoned further. I died, but for some reason I was reborn as a skeleton. I feel no pain, no hunger, no fatigue. I don't need to eat or sleep. And I don't know how to get out of here. Peter began to guess that he was trapped in a ruined dungeon with only one way out. He had to defeat the boss. The monster that was chasing him corresponded to level E. The difficulty level differed depending on the strength of the magical creature. The strongest monsters have a level A, the weakest have a level E. The hunters have exactly the same rank. However, for magical creatures, in addition to the above, their difficulty level is also divided into red, blue and green. This division shows whether a hunter can destroy a magical creature alone. And that if the hunter and monster are the same rank, the color division lets you know if you need to assemble a group for a raid or not. This helps reduce the likelihood of being killed in an attack. For example, if a hunter of rank B fights against a magical creature of the same rank B in green, he can win alone. Provided, of course, that he does not make some absurd mistake in the fight. However, when fighting a monster of rank B blue, it is recommended to assemble a team, as it is not easy to defeat such a monster alone. A magical creature of rank B of red color cannot be defeated alone. In that case, you will either have to assemble a team or call a hunter of a higher rank than B. That monster will be stronger than a normal awakened rank E. But on the other hand, that creature sees nothing, and sharp hearing is its weakness. Therefore, you can classify it as an E-ranked green monster. Ordinary living dead are either rank C or B, and the boss level is rank A. But those skeletons that killed me were very slow. Their movements were very loose as they raised their swords. If you think about the force with which they stuck their swords into me, their strength does not stand out in any way. Therefore, if you try hard enough, I think even ordinary people could handle them. That was Peter's way of thinking. But anyway, we don't know how many of these skeletons there are. I think the most important thing now is to find and defeat the boss. Even though he was awakened, Peter realized that his power level didn't even reach hunter rank E. So how would he defeat the boss? Peter thought that since he was a skeleton, maybe the other skeletons would take him for one of their own. Probably not likely, though. First I just wanted to get out of here. Now I have to kill the boss. How can I kill him? Peter asked himself the question. I think if I go outside, people will get scared and call hunters to catch me. So what do I do? There's no answer. I'm tired mentally of these thoughts. I'd rather not be reborn and just die. Some sound distracted him from his unhappy thoughts. Looking up, Peter saw the skeleton that had killed him walking toward him. Peter jumped to his feet, clutching the piece of pipe tightly. He felt fear, but at the same time he knew he had to act, for sitting in one place would not solve his problems. He remembered the situation when his father had fallen into a coma. He had been sad then, too. He had felt despair. But then he understood that he could not stay like that for long, because it would not make any difference. Especially not being able to get out. He would still have to fight these creatures. So let it happen now, who cares? The approaching skeleton raised his sword, and Peter gripped his weapon even tighter and rushed towards him. The skeleton struck with his sword. Peter managed to dodge it. If you cut off a skeleton's head, he should lose the ability to move. A thought flashed through Peter's mind. He brought his weapon down on the skeleton's skull with force. The impact cracked the skull, and a piece of it flew off somewhere. But it had no effect on the skeleton. It continued to attack Peter. Another swing of the sword. It was as if Peter had managed to dodge it again. But when he looked at the sleeve of his sweater, he saw a deep cut, from which a broken bone peeked out. Oh, shit. He got me. But I don't feel any pain. And I can move my arm. And for the skeleton, Peter's blow didn't go unnoticed. It started to wobble somehow. In addition, Peter began to see all of the skeleton's movements more clearly somehow. The skeleton kept swinging his sword. Peter, waiting for a moment, dodged, and struck another blow on his opponent's skull. The skeleton's head shattered into small pieces, and he collapsed at Peter's feet as a pile of bones. I did it. I've won. He rejoiced. But what was it? Some strange feeling. While he was rejoicing at his victory, some invisible substance detached itself from the defeated skeleton and transferred into Peter's body. It made him feel stronger. The broken bone healed before his eyes. If that's the way it went, I have a chance. I will kill the skeletons one by one, absorb their power, and when I build up enough strength, I'll be able to defeat the boss himself. Peter picked up the sword of the slain skeleton and removed the gauntlet from his hand so that the sword would not slip in his hand. He noticed that the scattered skull fragments were moving strangely. Could it be that, even though I'd gained his power, he could be reborn again? We need to get out of here before he gets up. I have to get back. No matter what, I'll get out of here. In the meantime, let's go. And so he went off into the unknown. Peter didn't know how long it had been since he had been in the red zone. 10 days, 20 days, maybe a month, or maybe even longer. Working as a miner, he had been in many different dungeons. But this was the first time he had seen one this long. And heliotrope, which can be extracted from magical creatures, was not to be found with that skeleton. A heliotrope is a bright red stone. It is a vital organ that can be obtained from any magical creature. It is a crystal of power. Heliotropes contain energy similar to magic, which can be used in various places, making the stones a major source of income for hunters. Most often, heliotropes are found in vital organs such as the heart or the brain. However, no matter how much Peter looked, that skeleton didn't have any stones. This was probably because he was so weak that his level of difficulty could not even be compared to the skeletons he had known before. The problem, however, is not the strength. This dungeon is very long. It's even too long. Perhaps if a normal group of hunters had come here, they would have given up long ago for lack of food and exhausted stamina. There's probably no way this dungeon could have been cleared. However, since Peter had become a skeleton, and no longer felt hunger or physical fatigue, he simply destroyed any skeletons that came his way. He took what he could use, and without a second thought, continued on his way. It seemed to him that in this world no more than 5 skeletons gathered in one place. However, there were dangerous moments when his arm or leg bones would break. After defeating an enemy, he would wait for his body to recover and then continue onward. He had already gained so much strength from defeated enemies that he could already fight and defeat larger skeletons, sometimes outnumbering him by several times. And so he finally made it. In front of him was a bizarre stone mountain with a locked gate at the bottom. Peter remembered that the last huge skeleton he killed had a key hanging from its neck. He went back to him and tore the key from his neck. Could this be the key to the gate? Said Peter to himself. Is there a boss behind the gate? He went to the gate, tried to put the key in the keyhole. The key fit. Peter turned the key 3 times, pushed the gate with both hands, and the gate swung open in front of him. Beyond the gate was a long corridor going into the distance. Peter walked down the dark corridor. How long he walked was unknown. Darkness surrounded him on all sides. And then, in the distance, there was a source of green light. He moved toward the light, each step getting brighter and brighter. And then Peter came to a clearing of some kind, brightly lit by a green crystal hanging somewhere above. There was a small wooden house in the clearing, and a tree all covered with green leaves. Peter stopped in a daze. It was so different from anything he had seen before. As he looked at the cabin, he thought, does the boss really live here? Has the door to the lodge started to open? Is the boss coming out already? Peter thought, gripping the hilt of his sword tightly. A moment more, and a gurney with a skull on it rolled out onto the porch. The gurney was being pushed from behind by some creature in armor. The creature walked around the gurney, took off its helmet, got down on one knee, and bowed to the skull on the gurney. After the creature removed its helmet, Peter saw that it was another skeleton. The skeleton then stood up and moved toward Peter. As the skeleton came closer and closer, it became apparent that there was fire blazing in its chest. This must be the dungeon boss, Peter thought. And now the skeleton was near, pulling out his sword. But for some reason he doesn't attack. All the skeletons he'd seen before had attacked at once they spotted him. But anyway, I have to kill him, and then I'll get out of here. With those words, Peter lunged at the motionless skeleton. And then something unimaginable happened. The skeleton, which had been standing still a second before, suddenly broke away and moved with such frantic speed that Peter could not keep up with him. And with a swing of his sword, the skeleton had cut off Peter's head, without Peter even realizing how it had happened. Peter was in total darkness. He felt nothing. Am I dead? Am I dead again? When he opened his eyes, he saw a skeleton with a sword standing motionless in the same spot. Peter touched his neck. Everything was in place, but he could still feel his head being chopped off. He had made the mistake of attacking the boss so recklessly, consumed with thoughts of finally being able to get out of the dungeon. However, compared to the skeletons I had seen before, this one was very fast. I didn't even realize at what point he was in front of me, thought Peter. Of course, it's a very good thing that by dying I can be reborn again and again. But I can't even imagine how many more times I'll have to be killed by this boss. But we must fight. There's no other way out. Peter lunged at me with his sword again, and the next moment his skull flew away again. And again. And again. And again. How long it went on, he didn't know. He lost count of how many times his head had been chopped off, broken into pieces. Once again, waking up, Peter screamed, "I want to get out of here. I want out." Though he felt no pain, he felt his throat being cut and his skull being pulverized more and more clearly. Why haven't I even hit him yet? Can't you beat him? I can't beat him. Maybe I should just give up. Peter thought about it. But he immediately put those thoughts out of his mind and got to his feet like a man on fire. And rushed into battle again. But the result was the same. While Peter resurrected once more, the skeleton returned to the house, rolled the gurney into the house and closed the door behind him. Gone. Won't he fight me again? Maybe I should break into the house. But no. Even if I went in, he'd kill me right away, like he'd done all the time before. For some reason I have a feeling I shouldn't go into the house. Peter reasoned. I'd rather wait to see if he comes back. Meanwhile, the boss, going into the house, picked up the skull carefully from the gurney and began to climb the stairs. On the second floor was a bed, prepared for sleep. The skeleton carefully lowered the skull onto the bed and began to walk back down the stairs. When he came down, he sat down on a stool and bowed his head in thought. And Peter continued his reasoning and calculation. He tried to count how many times he had already died. He got to 50 and then lost count. Then, before the boss came out, he decided to come up with a strategy on how to win. I start writing down on the rock how many times I die. When the boss comes out and goes in. Now I need to come up with a strategy to beat the boss. I'll start by calculating what advantages I have. Strength? Speed? No, he's faster than me. Skill? That's not even worth thinking about. Probably a strong enough hunter would be able to handle this boss. But with me, even though I absorbed the power of the skeletons I killed, there was no visible change. Yes, my advantages were bad. If only I had something special. I do. Something special. I have it. That thing I got when I woke up. The magic enhancement skill. Oh no. Magic enhancement only temporarily increases physical abilities. It doesn't improve the skills themselves. Peter remembered that all this time he had been unable to anticipate the boss's movements, and he was dying on the first strike. No matter how much he tried to strengthen his physical abilities, it didn't help him. Especially since, after using magic, he was haunted by a bone ache for days. If I could see the skeleton's movements, using the amplification would hit him. It turns out that there is no good way to win. But I still have to think about the way the boss moves so I can adjust to his movements. And when I can do that, I'll use magic enhancement. And Peter began practicing the moves he might use in a future battle. He didn't notice how time flew by while he was practicing. And then the door of the house opened. And the gurney with the skull rolled out onto the porch, followed by the boss. Maybe I'll die an infinite number of times today, too, and I won't be able to win, thought Peter, walking toward the skeleton. But I'm not giving up, because I need to get home. Here they are with their naked swords in the center of the clearing. Peter, assuming that the skeleton would easily dodge his upright strike, made a deceptive swing with his sword. And indeed the skeleton deflected in the direction that Peter assumed. The skeleton, strangely enough, reacted the same way to Peter's actions, which he had deliberately repeated from past fights. And Peter, rejoicing at the correctness of his guesses, was already striking what he thought was a decisive blow. But it was a deceptive confidence. And already his severed head was flying sideways. Damn it, lost again. But you have to stay calm. I didn't expect to win today. I've had some success. After dying many times in the first seconds of the fight yesterday, I was able to hold out a little longer today, going over Peter in my head until I blacked out. The progress is there. So after I wake up, I'll continue to study the boss's movements. And then I'll be able to anticipate his attacks. So if I study, maybe I should call that skeleton a teacher in armor. Yes, I'll call him teacher in armor. After the teacher in armor left the house, Peter would fight him, die, and study his movements. And when the skeleton returned to the house, Peter would repeat the movements the teacher had used in battle and hone his skills. His efforts were not futile, for now it was almost impossible for him to die from the first blow. This helped Peter learn even more about the boss and become stronger himself. But he hasn't won yet, he still needs to train. Once again, the door opens and out comes the teacher in armor with the invariable gurney and skull on it. Out already? Does it seem to me like the boss has been showing up earlier, or is it because I've lost track of time? Stretching out before the fight, Peter thought. Well, off to battle again. A moment later he was on the ground with his head cut off. He made the mistake of thinking he could win this time, and went straight into the attack. And so, after several fights, the boss returned to the house. Finally done for the day. Relieved, Peter exhaled. My body's fine, but I'm feeling a little tired. Well, that's okay, I'll be fine soon. He got up and went to the wall where he was making his notes. So let's see. The armor-clad teacher's movements were loose today. I, on the other hand, haven't been wobbly lately. And that's a good thing, since I can study the boss's movements even better. But what happens to him? Sometimes he stands like his whole body is petrified. And sometimes he just stares at me or at the mountain and doesn't move. Oh, come on. I need to practice before I forget the moves the armor-wearing teacher used in combat today. And Peter started practicing diligently, perfecting his skills. And the skeleton, as usual, took the skull to the second floor and placed it on the bed. And then, as usual, he went downstairs to think. And Peter went on and on practicing. And the skeleton had a vision of a young girl sitting on a gurney instead of a skull and telling him something. And she told him that if he wanted to meet her someday, he should teach Peter all the fighting techniques he knew himself, so that Peter would become a better fighter. And in the morning, the skeleton rolled the gurney out onto the porch as usual, took off his helmet, and knelt down on one knee in front of the gurney, bowing his head. And he was in that position much longer than usual. Are you still bowing? Usually you're done before I get there. You're taking a long time today. Expressed his bewilderment to the approaching Peter. The skeleton woke up at the sound of Peter's voice. He put on his helmet, drew his sword, and moved toward Peter, who was already standing in a fighting stance. But the boss, however, came up to him and struck a peculiar pose, leaving Peter slightly confused. What is it? You ain't never been in that pose before. I don't have a good feeling about this. What does that mean, and why are you staring at me? The armor-wearing teacher's demeanor was somehow suspicious. Peter began his attack with the hope that he would be able to hold out longer today than yesterday. And here he was again, defeated, lying on the ground. Peter got up on all fours, shaking his head, where was some incomprehensible noise. What had happened? Damn it, when did I die? I didn't even realize. I'd been making progress lately. How could I lose so fast? I'll never beat him. And then some object fell in front of him. Looking up, Peter saw a wooden sword. And a little farther away stood a skeleton also with a wooden sword in his hand, and gestured for Peter to pick up the sword. Turning his head, Peter saw that under the tree were both swords, his and his boss's. And the teacher in the armor impatiently continues to show him to pick up the wooden sword. Peter picked up the sword and was surprised to find that although it was wooden, it was the same length and weight as his metal sword. Picking up the sword, Peter saw that the boss was inviting him to come over to him. A thought flashed through Peter's mind. Is he offering to attack him? Is this some kind of ploy? He's not acting like a skeleton, he's acting like a living person. But still, I have a feeling this isn't something bad. It's all so strange. But either way, fight. Peter swung his wooden sword as usual. The skeleton ducked as usual, too. Peter struck a blow. The armored teacher moved away from him and in turn struck, but at the last moment he stopped the sword's movement an inch from Peter's neck. Peter was puzzled. Why didn't he kill me? What was wrong with him? And the boss invites another attack. Again, after a short fight, the boss's sword stopped near Peter's neck. And then it finally dawned on Peter that the teacher in the armor was teaching him. No, seriously, what was wrong with him all of a sudden? Does he really have a mind? I mean, he's a skeleton. I am, too, though. It's such an unusual dungeon. There's still so much I don't know about this place. It's a chance for me, though. If the boss wants to teach me, then I will learn. After all, it will help me get out of this place and kill him. And Peter, gripping his sword tighter from the wood, moved toward the skeleton with words, "Well, I'll be glad to learn from you, teacher in armor." And they fought with wooden swords for a very long time today. When they had finished, the skeleton left for the house, and Peter lay exhausted on the ground for a long time more, thinking, it's so hard that I can't come to my senses. I can't believe we fought for so long. Even though I don't have a stomach, I feel like I'm going to be sick. The teacher has gone home and I have to get up and train. No, I'll get some more rest, though. Sometime earlier. I'm fine. Don't make that face. You know that the first prince, my older brother, became king, not me. That's why I was sent into exile. And you, though seriously injured, survived the attack of an assassin sent by my brother. Officially, you are dead, but my father allowed me and you to live together in peace. And my father also gave me a little crown to keep my royal position in society. So let us enjoy our rest, my beloved knight. The princess and her companion approached the cottage. And here is our new home. Isn't it beautiful? The guards live in the village nearby. Will you look after me? Although you can't speak because of your wound, you understand me better than anyone. The cottage was not far from the village. The princess was fine with that. No one would interfere with her magical research. So they, two lovers, lived away from people, the princess and the silent knight. He always accompanied her, taking her on a gurney. And then one night the knights, sent by the princess's older brother, came to a nearby village. They set fire to the village. Their commander shouted, "Find the princess, and kill the others and burn everything." They killed all the princess's guards and all the villagers. Only the silent knight of the princess was left. He fought like a lion. Even though he was wounded, with several arrows sticking out of him, he still managed to kill 15 attackers. The commander of the attackers turned to him. "I can't believe that someone like you, mute, with no magic, was able to defeat 15 men. You fought bravely. At first I wanted to kill everyone but the princess, but I recognize your art of combat and let you live. You will serve me. When I'm promoted to general again, I'll give you a big reward. I want the princess. If I capture her, I will be rewarded by her brother for getting rid of her. And the first prince who threw me out will give me another chance. Or even promote me to general. Hey, what are you doing?" Meanwhile, while the commander was making this speech, tongues of flame began to run through the silent knight's body. First 1, 2, then more. And now the whole knight was on fire. And the commander shouted, "It can't be. I can't believe it. You have a heart of fire in direct command of the royal family. But how can it be?" And yelled to his soldiers, "What are you standing there? Hurry up and shoot. Kill him." And a battle ensued between the knight in flames and his attackers. And the silent knight emerged victorious. He killed all the attackers and their commander. But he was badly wounded, several more arrows hit him, and he was covered in blood. Out of his last strength the knight reached the princess's cottage, and here in front of the porch, where the princess was sitting in a gurney, his last strength left him. He collapsed and only stretched out his arms toward her. And the princess, seeing what had happened to her lover, got down from the gurney and also tried to reach out to him, begging him not to die. "No, please, don't die, please. I can heal you with magic. Don't go. Don't leave me alone." But the knight died. And the princess began to use various magical spells to revive the knight. And now she was succeeding. Success. "You are alive. I know. It's unforgivable to revive someone who's dead. But I feel so lonely. I can't just let you go. I almost did. All because of that fire. But I'm going to save you anyway." And so the magic worked. The knight woke up with fire in his chest. Well, Peter was taking stock of today's battle, making marks on the rock. "I think my fighting skills have improved. Sure, I still can't win, but I'm not losing as fast. And now it's time to practice." He took the wooden sword in his hands and noticed that the sword was all nicked and looked very old. Even though his teacher had given him this sword, it seemed to Peter, only a couple of days ago. Although his skills had improved, it was still a long way from winning. So Peter decided to try to use magic enhancement. But because I initially have a small amount of mana, magic enhancement does not work well. Even if I try to squeeze magic out of myself, I can't last more than 2 or 3 seconds in a state of amplification. And then, I also suffer from muscle pain for a week. Since I became a skeleton, I can forget about the muscle pain. Also, after each skeleton I killed, I absorbed unknown energy. I felt an increase in strength. So my strength and level of magic became higher. Peter decided to try it on his hand first. He concentrated to feel the mana inside him and channeled it into his hand. And it worked. He felt a surge of energy in his hand. The amplification went better and faster than before. But the effect of the amplification was different now than it had been before. You could see the magic spreading through his bones. The power was greater. However, the activation of the magic enhancement was still slow in order to use the enhancement in real combat. He still needed to practice to make the process go faster. Peter took note of how long he was able to stay in a state of magical amplification. 35 seconds passed. The tension in his hand grew. Suddenly a small piece of bone broke off with a crack. The bone didn't break, it just cracked, so he decided to continue. Another 10 seconds passed. The bones in my arm began to crack and break in different places from the strain. Anyway, I was able to hold on for 45 seconds. I could go on, but then I risked turning into powder altogether. Yes, indeed, my magic became stronger. First we have to wait for the bone to recover. It's interesting to watch the small pieces of bone fall into place on their own. Then, Peter tried to apply reinforcement to the other arm, both legs, head, and entire body at once. At the same time, while timing how long he could last. He decided that he needed to keep practicing his magical amplification so that his activation would happen faster. But there was still a problem to be solved so that his bones wouldn't crumble from magical amplification for as long as possible. For starters, Peter decided to try adjusting his power level. He slammed his sword into the rock with force. Then activated the magical amplification, and struck the rock with the sword again. The cut in the rock turned out to be several times deeper. Peter said out loud, "Did I really do that? It was much more powerful than I expected. I think I can do it. For starters, I need to focus on the lessons of the teacher in armor. And after he goes back to the house, I will continue to practice magic enhancement, and get used to using my power. I set myself a deadline of a week. During that time, I need to make progress in activating the magical enhancement. And in a week I will hopefully be able to defeat the boss." Meanwhile, the skeleton in armor addressed the skull lying on the bed with these words, "Mistress Princess. As you know, even though I received the blessing of fire, I was still born with a low social status. Moreover, being mute, it was fated for me to be sold somewhere and by someone for the sake of being used as experiments or simply to die on the road in a back alley. As a child, however, you took pity on me, along with the other children, and gave us a place to live. Moreover, you allowed me to be your knight. Therefore, I swore that I would protect you all my life. After we defeated those who tried to harm you, I felt sorry that I could no longer keep my promise, and afterwards, I closed my eyes. However, you did not abandon me. When I came back to life and saw the princess like that, I was in such excruciating pain that I lost consciousness. After I regained consciousness, I felt that the place had passed into my possession, and I continued to kill that young man an endless number of times. I don't remember how I, and the princess lady's house, came to be in this place, but I don't think it matters so much now. I was even honored to be able to protect and care for the remains of the princess mistress. It was not intentional, but I am very grateful to that young man who helped me get my spirit back, and to communicate my feelings once again to the princess mistress. Even though I don't understand what he's talking about, his feelings became clear to me. I think one day the time will come when that young man will overpower me. Before that, however, his soul will break, and he will turn into the former me, or those types on the outside. Or, even if he defeats me much faster, he probably won't be able to bear it all. But, I have a general idea of a way to get that young man out of here. I think that's one of my assignments here. Moreover, I don't know how much longer I can stay sane. Mistress Princess, you allowed me to become a knight. You even gave me love. Mistress Princess, I still love you. However, I also look forward to that young man who brought me to my senses to change. Once, I used this power of fire to protect you from your attackers. But, after seeing you suffer for trying to save my life, I thought it was no longer a blessing. But it is my selfishness to remember the past, and to keep the remains of the lady princess in this place, without a grave, or cremation. It is an act of betrayal of soul and love that you gave me. I would do anything if this fire would bring you peace rather than pain. I don't know, perhaps it is again a manifestation of my selfishness. Madam Princess, please, I beg you. Forgive my foolishness. As the new day dawned, Peter, picking up his metal sword, headed for the house. The skeleton, seeing him through the window, thought, "He's coming." However, he looks different than usual. Is he determined? Then it's time for me to get ready, too. The boss took the princess skull from the bed and placed it, as always, on the gurney. Turning to the table, on which lay the two things the princess had left behind, he thought, "I am sorry, Mistress Princess, but he will need them more than I will." The skeleton opened the door and rolled the gurney out onto the porch. Seeing the armored teacher pull out a metal sword, Peter said to himself, on normal days, he carried a wooden sword, but today, he, like me, brought a real sword with him. Master, perhaps, knows of my determination. I am going to apply today all that I have learned and gained during this time. However, I am having more and more thoughts and questions. Who is he? How has the teacher come to his senses? Why isn't he talking? Where is this place? What, this dungeon? And whose skull is on the gurney? How do you die here? And how do I get out? Can I get out of here? Why is he teaching me? Honestly, I don't want to fight you. However, I have made up my mind. I won't stall any longer. Defend yourself. And the fight began. Peter and the teacher in armor began circling the clearing, striking and dodging each other. Over the course of this week, Peter repeated the moves using magical amplification, analyzed his skills, and perfected them. The speed of activation of the magic amplification became possible, to use the amplification in real combat. However, there was also a problem, the duration of activation. If the magical amplification took too long, the bones would start to collapse. He could hold a magic boost for no more than 45 seconds. If he used the magic boost for too long, his bones would start to break so badly that Peter couldn't stand on his feet. He learned a few things while fighting his teacher. At some point in the fight, the boss's movements increase slightly when he counterattacks. It seems to have been an unconscious habit of the teacher. Peter has watched his movements hundreds of thousands of times, and in every battle, the teacher uses a similar counterattack. As his movements increased, Peter could calculate the moment of the counterattack and dodge. But despite this, he kept losing. Defensively, he kept trying to pick his moment to counterattack. And when that moment came, Peter managed to reach the boss's head with his sword, but the blow was a bit slippery, so only his helmet flew off the teacher's head. Peter activated a magical enhancement. But despite the fact that the strength of his attacks, thanks to the magical enhancement, the teacher in armor managed to repel all Peter's blows. It had already been 30 seconds since the activation, and the first crack in the arm bone had already appeared. There was only 15 seconds left before the limit of magical amplification was reached. Peter knew that he had to complete the battle with victory in that time. With a swing of the sword, the boss ripped open the clothes on Peter's chest, exposing the bones of his rib cage. And now the teacher's sword is pointed right in Peter's face, approaching at an incredible speed, and he no longer has time to dodge. And his mind races feverishly through his head. What? Am I going to die again? And his subconscious whispered. This isn't your last chance, is it? You're not going to die here. You'll have another chance. There's nothing you can do now. But the next time. Yes, next time. It's hard for you, give up, and you'll rest. And tomorrow you'll go on. Surrender and rest. The teacher's sword reached Peter's head and broke off a piece of his skull. And Peter, lulled by his subconscious, was about to surrender, but at the last moment, gathering his will into a fist, he cried out, "No. Never. I can't give up that easily. If I give up now and retreat, then the next time I will retreat too. And after that I will retreat again. And I'll retreat and give up all the time, and I'll never win the fight. So even if my body turns to powder, I will never surrender until I have won." And he rushed into the fight with redoubled vigor. And the bones were already beginning to crack and crumble all over his body. The right foot cracked and fell off. Then the left foot fell off with a crunch. But his hands were still holding the sword. Peter, in a desperate dash, putting all his strength, increased by magical enhancement, into the blow, brought the sword down on his teacher. The boss parried the blow with his sword. But since the force of the blow was enormous, their swords could not withstand it and disintegrated into pieces. Peter piled his whole body on top of the boss, knocking him to the ground. He pressed him to the ground, and grabbed the sharpened piece of pipe he'd never parted with the hand that was about to fall off, crushing the skeleton's skull with a full swing. He fell exhausted beside the body of his vanquished foe. But a moment later, Peter rose with difficulty to his knees and shouted into the void, "I won! I won! I can finally get out of here! I'm going home!" But a minute went by, then a second. 5 minutes passed and nothing happened. That's weird. This wasn't what I was expecting. I thought my victory would bring me home. He shifted his gaze to the house, and then to the gurney with the skull.